We are broadcasting through Zoom. We are broadcasting live on Instagram, and we should be broadcasting live on Facebook right about now too. So what we want you to do, or what I'd like to do with this evening, is I want to start by telling you a little bit about why I'm doing this and why I think it's important. But these are really more opportunities for you to be able to tell me what's on your mind and field your questions. So I don't want to be a talking head here for 35, 40 minutes. What I really would want to do is have you text your questions in on the chat or on Instagram or on Facebook, and want to respond to what's on your mind and what you're thinking about in terms of the future of the Georgia District. So let me just kind of get into it. So Brother Gray, why in the world are you putting your hat in the ring to be the 14th District Director for the state of Georgia? So let's start with that. I would tell you right off the bat, and by the way, those of you who don't know me that well, you will figure out in very short order that I am very direct, and don't mince words a lot because I think that ends up being confusing. So we're just going to keep it real if that's okay with you. So I'm not in this race to run against anybody. I'm not in this race to run against anything. I've actually heard that a few times from brothers. Am I trying to dethrone or unseat someone or any of that kind of stuff? And that has nothing to do with what I want to have happen. I just have some ideas that I think make a lot of sense for the Georgia District in terms of us moving the district forward. For those of you who don't know me quite as well, I am currently the president of the Nu Mu Lambda chapter seated in Decatur, Georgia. We have, I'm actually in my third term. This is the last year of the third term. We actually have term limits, but the brothers actually voted to suspend that provision of the Constitution to allow me to serve a third consecutive 2-year term, which is the first time that's happened in the nearly 39-year history now of Nu Mu Lambda. A couple of things that I want you to know about that may trigger some of the questions you might want to ask is, so how does that qualify me, or where does it qualify me in terms of being the next district director? And I would answer that by saying that I understand, as I believe most brothers understand, that the real work, the boots on the ground effort for Alpha happens at the chapter level, because that is where we are connected to the community most specifically. Obviously, we are operating through the sphere of the district and of the region and of the nature, but of the nation. But I guess in a way, Alpha, like politics, is local. So when people think of us, they think of what they see of us in our community. And there's a lot of things that we've been able to accomplish in Nu Mu Lambda that I think are great things that I think are scalable to any chapter in the state. So on one level, it is about making sure that all of my fellow chapter presidents and all of our fellow chapters across the state have the benefit not just of what we've been able to do successfully, but that every chapter should be able to benefit from what every other chapter does successfully as well. We don't operate in silos exactly, but with best practices and best ideas and idea sharing, we need to find a way to be able to bridge that gap so that we can benefit from each other's expertise and make us, I think, more uniformly successful, not necessarily because we're doing the same thing, but because we are using some of the best ideas. So let me tell you a couple of things that we've been able to accomplish at Nu Mu Lambda that I think are translatable. And this is not our last live webinar. Hopefully we'll be doing this a few more times in the future. But let me just share a couple of things with you that we've been able to accomplish since I've been chapter president at Nu Mu Lambda that I think make sense for everyone to be able to benefit from. So let's start with something that always comes up, and that is reclamation. So when I took the chair as president now 5 years ago, we had 75 fully financial brothers in the chapter, brothers that are in good standing with the general organization and with the chapter. So where we sit right now, 5 years later, we now have 154 brothers in the chapter that are in good standing with the chapter and with the general organization. So in 5 years, we've actually doubled the size of our chapter. And that is through our reclamation efforts. So let me spend a little bit of time on that, and then we'll start pivoting to something else. Because reclamation always comes up. How do we get brothers involved? What is it we do to bring brothers back to the house? And what we have found in Nu Mu Lambda, and what I think every brother really understands at its core, is that reclamation is really not all that complicated, honestly. There's a couple of things that are critical to it working, though, and we have found that to be the case. The first one is, how about this? Just be brotherly. Nobody wants to come back to a messy house, to use a little bit of a metaphor. We have found that one of the most important things we can do, especially when a brother visits a chapter meeting, which is really the audition for a brother back into Alpha, let's be honest about it, getting into a chapter meeting and seeing what's going on makes a big difference. So what we have found is that it makes a huge difference when a brother visits a chapter meeting that he is greeted warmly, that no one asks him where he's been, no one gives him the side eye. Of course, we do our due diligence and make sure that, that no one enters a house that should not be in the house. But we make a purposeful, intentional effort to make sure that every brother feels welcome. And I will tell you, one of the things that we've heard from, and we've reclaimed about 95 brothers over the last 4 years or so, that's one of the first things they mentioned, is that when I came to your chapter meeting, I felt welcome. That's something that anybody can do. That's not unique to Nu Mu Lambda, but it is important to make sure that it is front of mind. You know, that a brother is not sitting in the corner somewhere at the chapter meeting, waiting to be introduced or feeling like, the fifth wheel. So that's important. The second thing that is really important for reclamation is that the chapter actually be doing some stuff. And I'm going to say stuff because that's more appropriate. One of the most, what I think one of the most impressive parts of our chapter meeting is, and I think would be and should be the most impressive part of any chapter's chapter meeting, is the recording secretary minutes. That's actually one of our longest reports at our chapter, because brothers want to know that a chapter, because we rejoin through a chapter, we cross through a chapter, obviously, but we actually rejoin Alpha through a chapter. Brothers like to see that the work is being done. We're all very busy, and we don't want to do anything that seems like we waste our time. So when I come to a meeting, or any brother comes to a meeting, he wants evidence that the brothers that he is seated next to are actually fulfilling the mission. They're actually living out the mission. They're actually operating through all of our core national programs. Because there's one of two things drew most of us to Alpha. One is a sense of brotherhood. The other one is a sense of the work and the service. And for many of us, it's both of those things. So we have found that it is key to knock it out of the park with both of those things when we have brothers visit our chapter meetings. And that's most of what our reclamation effort is about. I remember a few years ago, I was asked in a group of council of presidents when our reclamation date was going to be. And that confused me a little bit, because I don't think you just have a reclamation date. I think you have a reclamation plan. And we actually have a 3-page reclamation plan that we'll be sharing out over the next few weeks. But so be brotherly and be doing some stuff. That doesn't sound that complicated, but at its core, that's some of the most important things you need to do, because brothers will engage if that's the case. Brother Greg, that sounds a little oversimplified. Well, remember what I told you? We had 75 brothers 5 years ago. We have 154 brothers now. So maybe simple is better in some cases. So, but there are other very specific things we do as part of our reclamation plan. And as we do more of these live round tables or town halls, I guess, in a way, we'll talk more about that. So, but that is key. Another thing that I would have you know is many of us have 501c3s that we operate in partnership with. And that is what fuels a lot of the efforts that we do, especially around whether it's giving away scholarships or funding, go to high school, go to college programs. I want to share with you something else that I think is also repeatable and scalable, which I think a district director should be bringing to you, not just ideas of what they think can work, but ideas that have already worked. So I'm sharing with you what I know works that I think is scalable. 5 years ago, through our foundation, we raised about $6,000 or $7,000, which is nothing to sneeze at. But that is uh, um, that we actually did through our foundation in partnership with our foundation is the Charles H. Wesley Education Foundation. But we're doing it the same way a lot of chapters do it, and I call it like bake sales, and it's not a bake sale, but we sponsor something, people pay a certain amount of money, the chapter profits or the foundation profits after the overhead, of certain things. So we would do a wine tasting, for example, and it's $25 for a wine tasting ticket. And we look at it when it's all said and done, we're clearing about $8 or $9, or maybe $10 on a good day. So I had a brother actually come to me and say, Brother Gray, I'm not really into wine tasting. How much money did y'all make off of it? And I told him. He said, I would have rather just written you a check for $25 because I could have stayed at home, watched the game, and you would have had more profit. That's an interesting comment. So here's where we took that. We kind of said, well, if that's the case, that brothers would actually do this, let's see if we can put this into play. So we created something called the Wesley Club in partnership with the foundation. And what we did is we identified levels of giving. So if you gave between $250 and $499 toward the foundation during fraternal year, that actually put you in a black level of recognition. So there's actually recognition levels. If you did $500 to $999, that was old gold level. And if you did over $1,000, that puts you in jewel level, in the jewel level status. And I'll tell you what those statuses mean in terms of recognition later. But we're just testing the theory to see whether brothers would just write a check. So $6,000 of the first year before we did the Wesley Club, and we said, well, let's set a goal. So we set a goal of $20,000 just to see what would happen. And suffice it to say, the first year, we brought in $32,000. The next year, we brought in $43,000. The next year, we brought in $52,000. And this year, we will end up with about $53,000. So in one chapter with a few very easy strategies, we brought in $180,000. In my mind, I'm thinking, why can't every chapter have that same blueprint? In fact, why can't the Georgia District have that blueprint and be able to serve our college brothers with a greater resource pool to incent them toward academic excellence and other things? So there's probably 15 of those things that we'll be sharing over time that are repeatable processes that I think every chapter should be able to benefit from. But your processes, I want to benefit from too. We want to benefit from in Nu Mu Lambda and across the state. So practical and tactical is really my mindset when it comes to being your next Georgia District Director. So I've been chatting for about 17 minutes or so. I want to stop talking for a moment, and what I want to start doing is actually fielding some questions from you brothers, because I'm guessing that for some of you, I'm more of a known entity than others. And so let's see what we might get in terms of some questions from folks out there. So you can text it up on Facebook. We got brothers looking at Facebook. We got brothers looking at Instagram, also on Zoom. So let's see. Brother Key, let's see. Do we have a question? Okay, so we've got a question in. What is the first district concern you will tackle as district director, and why? Okay, well, let's start with an easy one. Okay, so let me tell you the first thing that I think we really can tackle right out of the gate. And that is having brothers understand that the brotherhood doesn't work for the district works for the brotherhood. Say that one more time. The brotherhood is not in service of the district and the board. It is the other way around. The brotherhood is at the top of the funnel to me when it comes to our execution of what it is that we're all about as alphas. So the district should be focused on making sure that it is providing every single tool possible to help that happen. So what are some of the specific things? One of the more specific things is that I think we have an opportunity to be much better with communication to the brotherhood. And this is something you have to be very intentional about. Now, just to be clear about it, Alpha doesn't pay anybody. So it's not like this is a paid position or something that we could get somebody to do in general. But I'm just saying that we need to, well, allow me to be frank. I'll be more frank. Um, if it is something that is happening that is important for brothers in the state to be aware of or to participate in, 3 days notice won't do it. A week's notice won't do it. When we know things are big and on the horizon, we have to be intentional enough to be able to signal that kind of information out to you at least 30 days in advance, because you have lives too. You are busy people too. You have jobs as well. And I think it is a general courtesy to be able to send information out to the brotherhood that is important to the brotherhood, that is at least 30 days in advance. In my mind's eye, actually 90 days is better, but I'm going to start with 30 days. So that's the first thing, that we need to be better at communicating. I don't know that we're necessarily bad at planning. I just don't have any evidence of it unless I find out about it with more time. So that's the first thing. I think the other thing is that we need to work on a little more transparency as well. I don't want any brother in the state having to guess about what it is we're doing or why we're doing any particular initiative. We should know precisely why we're engaging in item A, B, C, or D, because my experience is, even outside of Alpha, is if you want me to engage, you also need to talk to me like a grown-up and have me understand why it is that we need to be doing things. I think that allows for brothers to engage more because they want to engage versus engaging for fear of some consequence. I happen to believe that we should be able to instrumentally put a few more carrots in, so we're always not working by sticks. I don't think everything should be tied to, my full incentive program should not be tied to you do this or you don't have a line. There you go. I'll just be very frank about it. So I think planning, transparency, and better communication are things that we can do right out of the gate. Now, some things are a little bit more of a lift, but I think those things we can do right away. And I think most brothers would appreciate that. So let's see, we got another one here. Brother Gray, what is your proudest moment as a brother in the fraternity thus far? From Instagram. What is my proudest moment in the fraternity? Oh boy. I've had a couple of them, but they are also recurring proud moments. One of them was this weekend when we had our induction ceremony. The Cab Alpha's Mentoring Initiative. We have over 100 young men in our program, ages from 3rd grade all the way to 12th grade. And we do a formal induction ceremony for them every year, where their parents are there. And I think yesterday, in terms of most recent space, would be the proudest moment, because we had 300 people in that auditorium, 100 young men, 60 brothers of Alpha, and probably 150, between 150 and 200 family members at an auditorium at a local high school. And watching those young men in their long sleeve white shirts with their black and gray striped ties and their khakis and their dress pants stand up and raise their hand and basically commit to excellence for another school year, and knowing that their parents trust us to help that happen, that's a big deal. Very proud moment. I think on a personal note, one of the proudest moments I had is when a brother called me almost 6 years ago now and said, Brother Gray, you should consider running for chapter president. Because I had no intention of doing that in the least. I figured I might be on an executive board at some point before I die. But I came to Alpha kind of late. For those of you who don't know, I'm actually a spring 2011 initiate. So all the stuff that we're talking about, including becoming a life member and all that stuff, really has only happened over the course of about 7 years. So I'm in my jewel year now. But that evening when a brother called me and said, I believe in you basically enough to encourage you to take the next step in terms of leadership, was a big deal, because this is a brother that's been a brother for a very long time. And my chapter, and just like a lot of other chapters, depending on how things go, you have to make sure that sometimes you can feel like it's time to sit on the bench until it's your turn, kind of to walk up the ladder, so to speak. And what that brother said to me is that you don't need to wait, you need to work. And that's an important moment, because this moment is very similar to that. I've been getting asked by brothers for a long time if I'm going to run for district director and other stuff, quite frankly. And much of what helped me lean in is knowing that brothers believe that there is a better out there for the state of Georgia and the Georgia district. And they trust me enough to be the tip of the spear toward getting us to that place. So every time someone, it sounds silly, but every time someone likes our Facebook page and is just looking, that's a very proud moment for me. Anything that happens that makes me feel like I'm engaging more with the brotherhood, those are the greatest moments, and they happen every single day. And so that sounded maybe like I was waxing philosophical a little bit, but every day that I get a chance to wear these colors and this pin and this tie and be in Nalia pretty much every day of my life, because I still have a little neophyte flavor in me, I guess, those are the most important things, and those are the proud moments. You know, Alpha is not proud in a moment, it's Alpha is proud in a lifetime. Okay, so center your Instagram with Zoom. You are looking away. Okay, that's my team telling me I need to do better. There you go. Hope that makes you happier. Okay, so, oh boy, how would you handle IMDP as it relates to dates and the time spent at IMDP? Boy, y'all are jumping way in the pool tonight. Good stuff. So let me kind of connect that a little bit to the what I would do right away type of thing. The initial membership development process, I believe, should be something that every new brother looks back on and says, that was my wow moment. That was just incredible. That this was just, every part of that just had me leaning forward. I think sometimes the process falls short of where it can be, because we don't have enough time to prepare for it in advance. And when I say we, I mean the brothers that have to do the lectures, the brothers that have to do sergeant at arms, all of the mechanisms that need to be in play to make IMDP work the best possible way, sometimes stumble a little bit because we don't have enough time to be able to execute. I'll give you an example. Let's say your chapter is responsible for sergeant at arms on the second weekend, okay? Well, that puts your chapter in a little bit of a weird place if you don't know when the second weekend is. So you can't sign up brothers, you can't ask them to volunteer, because they're going to say the same thing brothers say to me. Well, when is the second weekend? Well, we'll let you know. Well, you start talking to grown amen about we'll let you know about an entire weekend when we have families and jobs and all that other kind of stuff. What ends up happening is you end up just pulling the people that happen to be there just because you have to have somebody do it. And that's not, to me, Alpha is better than that. Very often, if I knew, for example, I was going to do what my favorite lecture is, the leaven of re-examination, leaven of self-examination, which is one of my favorite things, kind of connected to the whole campaign, is if I know 3 weeks in advance that I'm going to do it, I can actually study those slides. I can look at them. I can figure out where I might want to be able to weave a story in that is applicable and relevant to the candidates so that they are actually feeling that lecture. If I know about it 3 or 4 or 5 days in advance, what I end up having to do is ask, because no brother could commit to this because we didn't tell them a date. So I end up asking a brother that happens to be in the room, can you do this lecture? That's not the Alpha that we should be putting on display for men that we are anticipating being alphas. You know what that leads to? That often leads to brothers turning around, reading the slide, not sure exactly what's on it, running across typos that are not corrected. All those things are things that are problematic. And it's not because, sometimes I've heard before, it's like, well, they're interests, they're candidates, they're not brothers yet. Why are you so concerned about them? Well, I'm concerned more, or first, I should say, about the brotherhood in terms of being respectful of the brotherhood's time. But to the candidates as well, if they are in that room because we believe that they should be in that room, because by that time the chapter has said yes, at least through a smoker, then we should be creating an experience that is an alpha experience. The mystique of alpha and the reality of alpha should not have a big gap between. And when we don't plan well, we don't execute well. And so with IMDP, planning well, broadcasting well, letting brothers know in advance what's going on is important. One last thing I've heard about this, and it may be so. Well, and it is kind of a reflection. It reflects to, I think, to not just college brothers, but brothers at large. Well, if you tell brothers that long in advance, they will start doing stuff that is untowards and that is not, within the standing orders, and, it'll be violations. And look, brothers who are going to do stuff the wrong way are going to do stuff the wrong way. We don't chase that. We get ahead of that by making sure that we do the proper development and scheduling ahead of time. That's where you can build in accountability. It's hard to hold people accountable when you do things at the last minute. Okay. Rodney Thrash, R Thrash 214. Oh, brother, I know who that is. What are your thoughts on the district convention? Any plans to revamp the current model? If so, what would their remodel? Okay, so no one's throwing softballs tonight. Okay, I get that. So what are my thoughts on the district convention? My thoughts on the district convention is that it could be a more valuable experience for the brotherhood. I don't want brothers coming to the district convention and having their delegate strength there simply because if they don't, they can't have a line or they can't have intake. Everything cannot point back to the stick of not being able to have a line. So specifically, brother, these are a couple of things I would do. And the first one falls under the category of developing leaders, which, by the way, is the first pillar of our mission statement and the first pillar of my platform. I believe, for example, if a chapter does well enough to be recognized in the award ceremony, say for voter registration efforts, which is one of the things that you can get recognized for, and we've been recognized for a couple of times, then I think we should make an intentional move to invite that chapter to actually do a workshop at the next district convention so that other brothers can learn from what that chapter did. That was good stuff. I believe that if you get a reclamation award at the district level, whether it's brotherhood or for the chapter, we should be inviting that chapter at the next district convention to say, okay, so what specifically are you doing? What's the footprints on the dance floor look like for you to be able to have such a great result when it comes to reclamation? When it comes to voteless people as a hopeless people, voter registration, when it comes to the DeKalb Alphas Mentoring Initiative or whatever your mentoring program is all about, the go to high school, go to college. If you're doing extraordinarily well and you're actually being recognized for it, then you should also we should be trying to find a way for you to share those best practices. So on one level, it is about making sure we get brothers in to some of those breakouts that are actually beneficial to the chapter. That might even determine, brother, who you send as a delegate. Because if we know what the breakouts are going to be, by the way, I think you should know what the breakouts are going to be at least 60 days in advance. That might even determine who you choose to send as a delegate from your chapter based on what you think the learnings are going to be or what the takeaways are going to be. So that's one thing. So best practices should be rolling forward from one district convention to the next. Another thing that I think we ought to be doing is we need to have a very intentional brotherhood by profession space. In other words, and this is, I think would be a huge benefit to our college brothers, but to alumni brothers as well. There should be a space where we have a breakout of some type, and I work with the convention chair to figure out how to do this. But all the brothers who are aspiring to be attorneys should know all the brothers at the convention that are attorneys, and they should have some space so they can talk about everything from how they chose the school they're going to what they should do to prepare for the bar, what type of types of law are there that they might want to practice. We should be getting brothers in the same space with brothers who have already traveled that road. So whether it's law or medicine or education or social service, we should actually be intentional about putting brothers in the same space. Now, we can even do that at some of the meals that we have there, but I want brothers to be able to benefit from the expertise of other brothers, to be able to further their own ambitions, and or to be able to switch gears, because maybe I want to hang out with the brothers that are attorneys, and I'm not an attorney, but I'm thinking about changing my life and going in that direction. So that's another thing I think we ought to do. I think that there is probably a better way to generate money for the Georgia District Education Foundation than simply having brothers kind of one-up each other during the convention time space. I mentioned before that we've done a pretty decent job of raising money. I think in that space, we could find a way to plug in something that has some sense of recognition, or some modality that allows brothers to be able to make contributions, but not necessarily have something go on for 35 or 40 minutes that most of the brothers in the room do not feel connected to. So I think that also helps with promoting academic excellence. If we can get some real dollars on the table, we can actually push that. But I think it needs to be a more inclusive setting. I think maybe the long story short is that we need to up the value of what brothers feel is going on at a Georgia District Convention, so that they are coming because they want to come, not because they have to come. I would also say that it's probably not a bad idea to actually do an evaluation after every district convention, so that we, just like we would do with anything else that is a large scale project, we need to know what the brotherhood thinks about it. Because remember, the district convention is there to serve the brotherhood, not the other way around. So that's just a couple of things there, Fred. I hope that wasn't too obtuse, but let's say, okay, so someone said, let's look at some other stuff here. So, and this is supposed to be a softer question, brothers. How about this? How do you plan to address divisive culture with my leadership style? That's a softer question. Well, I think I would start by quoting Albert Schweitzer. Albert Schweitzer is 1952 Nobel Prize laureate. And he said something around leadership, because I think a lot of this is about leadership, that has always stuck with me. And his quote is, example is not the main method of influence, it's the only of influence. So example is not the main method, it's the only method of influence. So I think the best way to set a tone in the district that is not divisive is to be a leader that is not divisive, to operate in a way that is not divisive, and not do anything that unintentionally or incidentally pits brothers against one another. I think that is one of those top-down type of things. And for the brothers who know of me, the ones that we've interacted with before, my hope is that you know my demeanor and my style and my way of engaging with brothers well enough to know that inclusion and kind of making sure that brothers feel welcome and loved and that we're lifting each other up is a very big deal for me. No matter whether that brother is 19 years old and just got in the frat, or whether that brother has been a brother for 55 years. I think the way we express and talk, and even the way we communicate through emails and everything, has a tone to it. And I think it's important to be very intentional about all the messaging, so that when we send a message to brothers, that message is uplifting, that it does what it's supposed to do to kind of bind the brotherhood together. And that is probably easier said than done, because everything the district director is going to say or do, everything I would say or do as a district director, is probably not going to be universally hailed as wonderful and all that stuff. I mean, I've made decisions in my own chapter that have resulted in brothers deciding to leave the chapter. But every decision I made was based on what I believe in my heart was for the good of the brotherhood. And that's why that theme runs throughout everything in this campaign. It is about being for the good of the brotherhood, for the good of our brotherhood. And I think if that's your guiding principle, that you can't be divisive if really you care about the brotherhood writ large. And so I think a lot of it is leading by example, but remembering that it's not the main method of influence, it's the only method of influence. So let's see what else we got here. Let's see, it looks like, has somebody else got a question that they're chatting in here? Brother Key, do you have any more for me that are coming up? I don't know. I love talking to alphas because y'all don't play. Y'all get right into the thick of what's going on. Let me talk a little bit about leadership development for a minute. Because our campaign, for those of you who haven't been to the website, you should check it out. It's Gray for the Good, the numeral 4, grayforthegood.com. My platform is not built on any cool or fancy or quirky themes or cool statements or acronyms or anything like that, because I've always found that I even have a hard time remembering the acronyms associated with what I do. So for the good of the brotherhood is the overarching theme, but the platform is really based in something that we all know very well, and it's our mission statement. It's 4 pillars: leadership development, promoting brotherhood, promoting academic excellence, and also service and advocacy for our community. So let me tell you one thing that I think we can do differently and or better just in the leadership development space. Each year we have the district leadership development retreat that we do usually in April, where all the presidents meet with the presidents, the vice presidents meet with the vice presidents, and so on and so forth. I think that we should pull some of that into our district convention, to get back to the question that was asked a little earlier. People need to actually hear from presidents, chapter presidents, before they become chapter presidents. And here's why. Some of us might really be more enthusiastic about being chapter presidents. Others of us, if we hear what the real scoop is, might decide that chapter president maybe is not a good thing right now. Or what does a financial secretary do different from a treasurer? Or why do you have a corresponding secretary and a corresponding secretary? By the way, what's the deal with your Constitution? I mean, why do you have certain things in your Constitution? All of those are things that we should be taking as an opportunity to make teachable moments for us, even in our district convention. But furthermore, how about this? If we have a panel of presidents talking about being presidents, everybody's not making it to the district convention for whatever reason. Shouldn't we be capturing that information on video? And shouldn't we be putting it on a website that is useful and archiving that so that brothers can benefit from it, not just in the space of the convention, but year over year over year? I think we should have a virtual training platform that allows brothers, without the impediment of travel, to be able to actually benefit from all the leadership development we do wherever we are. It doesn't cost that much to get a couple of camcorders and set them up in some of these conference rooms, but it would be invaluable for brothers to be able to learn on their own time and really be able to and by the way, not just see it once, but maybe see it twice or a third time, so that we, again, are learning from each other in the easiest possible way. And for those of you who work in industry, you know, virtual training programs it's almost a no-brainer that that's going to be the case. Not just because it's cheaper, because trainers are cheaper, although we are. But because it gives me a way to be able to make what we do accessible to a larger group of people over a larger span of time. So, and by the way, I actually own a training company, and I'm a COO in another training company. So these are not just things I think are good ideas. These are things I've actually put into place already. And it's not as difficult as some people might have you believe. But having skill and expertise in the area definitely helps. By the way, I train leadership development more than anything else. So there's that. Let's see. Talk about an initiative you've implemented locally that is scalable to chapters throughout the state. And why are you the brother to lead that effort in the district? Okay, maybe softball questions is not clear to you brothers as to what a softball question is. So uh, uh, one initiative, and I talked about one of them, is the Wesley Club that we were talking about, the way we actually partnered in a more meaningful way with our 501c3. But I would tell you something else that we did that I thought was pretty innovative and actually connects to how alumni chapters and the college chapters that they advise work together, is we actually we advised two college chapters, Mu Alpha at Emory and also Upsilon Omicron at Oglethorpe. Mu Alpha has a very long storied past. It's older than the Mu Lambda, in fact. I think 42 years old now. Hopefully any Mu Alpha alum on here won't yell at me for getting that off by a year or so. But we know there's a lot of Mu Alpha alumni that really are still very connected to the chapter and want to be able to help and want to be able even financially support the brothers on the yard. Well, what we said was then, why don't we try to figure out how to create a memorandum of understanding that allows our college chapters to use our foundation as a fiscal agent. So if a brother from Mu Alpha wants to be able to pour some money in the till, for example, for Miss Black and Gold, or do a sponsorship for Miss Black and Gold pageant, they can do that and also have it be tax deductible because it's running through a foundation, which makes sense because a lot of the money that's raised from Miss Black and Gold actually goes to scholarships for the contestants. So creating a memorandum of understanding so that our college chapters can benefit from our 501c3s is an idea that's worked wildly well for us. And by the way, the amount of money that they're taking in as a result of it has gone up just because of that. Not because brothers wouldn't do it because it's good at their heart, but if I can get a tax letter too, why not? Another initiative that we've done over the last couple of years. So let's see, I have to pick one out of a lot of them. A lot of brothers were not aware that we actually started registering high school students, and some of you may have been doing this too, registering high school students to vote on the high school campus. We started doing that 4 years ago. And talking to the students that are up to 17 and a half years of age, and our team is much more informed on the nuts and bolts than I am. But we've made a conscious effort to target high schools and high school seniors to register to vote. First of all, because many of them were not. So we weren't sitting in a place where 80% of the people that were passing us were already registered to vote. So the yield in terms of return on getting more registered voters was there. But it also allowed us to be able to talk to them about what voting is and why it's important. So it's not just a registration play, it's also an education play and an importance play and a civic responsibility play. And I will tell you that we actually partnered with the AKA, one of the AKA chapters in our in DeKalb County. And over the course of 1 year, we actually registered 500 students over the course of 1 year, just by going to local high schools. And now we're making a point of cycling through those high schools on a regular basis now, so that they now are expecting to see us. In fact, they're disappointed if we don't call them first now. So we now have that as a system. Every chapter can do that with a local high school or high schools in their area. In fact, I want to give a shout out to the brothers of Ada Lambda, actually posted on their Instagram page today that they were doing that very thing. I think they registered 50 students today, 50 students. And those folks are now going into the electorate. And goodness knows, we need as many informed voters in the electorate as possible, especially these days. So what does alpha mean to me? Oh, what does alpha mean to me? I hope you'll let me pause for just a moment because I want to be, I won't be precise, but I want to be thoughtful about this. And let me start by telling you, or reminding you that I became an alpha in spring of 2011. My brother actually, my younger bio brother, actually crossed through the Nu Mu chapter, seated at Georgia Tech in 1982. He's the only alpha that I really know. I mean, there may have been other alphas in my life. I just didn't know who they were. So I didn't have the same experience that a lot of brothers have, knowing that this teacher was an alpha or this boss on this job was an alpha. I'm a big history buff. I had no idea Maynard Jackson was an alpha. I didn't know. And that was not on my radar when I was younger in life. The college I went to had no fraternities and sororities, so there was not even a way to be able to plug it in there. But let me tell you because what does alpha mean to me is kind of also about when I fell in love with the fraternity. After the kids were out of the house and all that stuff was going on with actually being able to have a little bit more of an empty nest, my brother's conversations around alpha started resonating in my head a little bit more because I've always been a big community guy and doing service in the community and with local sports teams and high schools and the whole thing. So that's really kind of been in my DNA for a while. And so then I started thinking, well, my brother's talked about this in a way that I've never heard him really talk about anything else. So I wanted to do what I think most candidates should do. I wanted to learn about what alpha is all about. So let me tell you what I did. And the brothers in my chapter have actually heard this before. I knew there was a history book, but I had no idea where the history book was. So I went online and I wanted to purchase our history book. It took me about 3 weeks to find somebody that was actually selling a history book. And so I went online and I purchased that history book, our history book, for $300. Now, some of you may have just fallen out of your chair when I say I purchased our history book for $300, but I did. Because before I raised my hand to anyone to tell them I wanted to be a member of this brotherhood, this wondrous thing that we know as Alpha Phi Alpha, I needed to do my homework. So I got that history book and I read it from cover to cover. Our history book, I read it from cover to cover. So I went past, what was at the first meal, and I went past, who the jewels were. All those things were important. But really what struck me as I read more and more and more through our history book is how at every pivotal moment in this nation's history for over a century, every pivotal moment, there's either an alpha right in the middle of it, or there's an alpha with 2 degrees of separation from it. And that blew me away because I'm a big history buff. So all of a sudden I had to replay all my history tapes in my mind and connecting that, so that guy was an alpha. And this guy that I revere is an alpha. And this guy that I revere is an alpha. And this person I model myself as. And all of a sudden, everything came into place to say that everything I've ever wanted to be as a responsible man in this society, all of those role models, unbeknownst to me, were all alphas. And so the light switch flipped on. And I said, I have got to be part of this because it's the piece I'm missing. And I say that at some risk because I know some brothers have wanted to be alpha since they were in the 5th grade. That wasn't me. It wasn't me because that's not the path that brought me here. But when I learned what this fraternity is really all about at its core, which is brotherhood and service and excellence and leadership, I could not figure out why I even had waited before. So alpha to me, what it means to me, it means that it is, if there's a beacon of what a Black man can be and should be in this society, Alpha Phi Alpha is the battery that fuels that beacon. So I told you I'm still got a little neophyte juice in me, and I do. I travel 40 weeks a year. I'm in every airport. I'm wearing Nalia. I wear Nalia everywhere. I know it's kind of silly, but I want people to know what I'm part of. Even people that don't understand it, I want them to ask because I want to be part of something that changed the world more than I ever knew. And now I have the privilege to serve our community and the brotherhood as a brother of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. And, I'm actually looking at the screen and looking at the, what I have on, and it honestly chokes me up a little bit because it is such an honor, but it is also a burden. Being an Alpha is a burden, but it is a noble burden. And serving as district director is a larger burden. I could honestly be done with my last year of 6 of being a chapter president and just going and sitting in the third row of the chapter meeting and eating wings and having cantaloupe just like all the other brothers. And I will do that one day. But right now, we are called to serve in the way that makes most sense to us, that we think we can bring the most value to in our organization and also in our district specifically. And I think I'll wrap with this. One brother said, well, why not wait? Why you're rushing? Well, brothers, life has taught me over and over again that all we have is now. There is no tomorrow when it comes to doing the things that are important. And so me waiting 2 years or waiting 4 years or waiting for this brother or that brother or, it's just not how I'm built. I'm not built that way. And that's not a disrespect to anyone. I would have run for this office if 50 brothers were running. I would have run for this office if only I were running. Because I just feel like at this point in time, with everything that I've learned and everything that I bring outside of Alpha into Alpha, that your support and your vote for me and your delegates' vote for me for district director, it's something that I would want you to be proud of the rest of your life. I told Brother James Bennett, and many of you know Brother Bennett, if you're wearing any Nalia, you've probably given him some money at some point in time. And what I told him was, when I first crossed, was that I want to operate as an Alpha as if my letters could be taken away because I'm not doing what I said I was going to do. I told my chapter, I said, we talked about this around intake. It's like, what if the brothers in our chapter actually had the right to vote us out of Alpha based on what kind of Alphas we have been since we become Alphas? That'd be something. We're in, but getting in is not enough. Till the day I die, my last breath, I will probably be wearing Nalia on my deathbed because I want everyone to know that Alpha is infused in everything I do now. It's infused in every thought I have. I wake up thinking about what it is we can do differently and better for the state. And I also realize that and I want you to know that when you vote for me, if you vote for me, and I hope you will, that you're not just voting for me, you're voting for you. Because this is too heavy a lift for one brother to hold on to. So when you say you're in support, I want you to know what that means. That means that I'll be tapping you on your shoulder and saying, brother, come to this table because I need your ideas on this. Brother, come to this table. I can help raise $180,000 for the Georgia district. I need all of you, including college brothers, to help us figure out how we best utilize that for the district. I'm just a humble servant of this fraternity, but I do believe that I can serve it in a way that will take it to completely different levels, and in a way that would make you proud and make our Jules proud and make every brother that came before us proud. I don't take this lightly. I don't take myself that seriously, but I take Alpha very seriously. And so I hope that just through some of the things we've shared this evening, and we'll be doing more of these every couple of weeks or so, where we'll dive down. I don't know where we're going to dive after tonight, after these questions, but I'm sure there's a place to go. That I want you to have full faith and confidence in the fact that I understand that example is not the main method of influence. It's the only method of influence. So I'm staking my reputation and my record and what I've done already, not what I'm thinking about doing, but what I've already done I hope that will be a yardstick that you will be able to measure me by and say, Brother Gray needs to be in that chair. And not for the dais, not for the trappings of leadership. You know, I spoke today for a leadership group, leadership training here in Washington, D.C. This is a hotel room where I am to do this, where I was talking to leaders at the Office of the Comptroller. And I had the wonderful opportunity to train them, but I got applause from them and a check. I don't come to Alpha because I need applause or a check. I get that elsewhere. My work is all about the fraternity, and it's all about you for the good of the brotherhood. So if you haven't already, please go to the website, gray4thegood.com. You'll see a lot more detail on some of the things that we do. On every aspect of social media, it's Gray for the Good. Whether it's Twitter or Facebook or Instagram or YouTube channel, it's all there. Look at what we're actually talking about doing, not just who we want to be, but what we actually want to do in concrete terms. Because it's game time, brothers. It's time to make this thing work. And I would be remiss, in fact, I wouldn't be remiss, I would probably just get beat up by my team if I also did not tell you that your financial support is also important. You can actually donate via the website. You can donate on PayPal, grayforthegood@gmail.com, on Cash App, $Gray4thegood. Because my plan is to go to every corner of this state. For those of you who are looking and you're not in metropolitan Atlanta, I will be in your neighborhood. I want to see you face to face. I want you to talk to me face to face, because this is about you. It's not about me. I've done enough stuff for me, about me. This is my opportunity to do something for the good of the brotherhood. And that's why this is all happening. So why don't we just end it on that? Visit all our social media, reach out to me, send me questions. You can send them to grayforthegood@gmail.com. Let's take Georgia to a completely different level. And let's do it together for the good of the brotherhood. Thank you, brothers, and have a great night.